the elementary function of any political organization, namely to protect the lives of its members and their way of life. Under the technological conditions of the pre-atomic age, the stronger nation states could, as it were, erect walls behind which the citizens could live in safety, while the weaker states were protected by the operation of the balance of power, which added the resources of the strong to those of the weak. The modern technology of transportation, communications and warfare, and the resultant feasibility of all-out atomic war have completely destroyed this protective function of the nation-state. No nation-state is capable of protecting its citizens in their way of life against an all-out atomic attack. Its safety rests solely in preventing such an attack from taking place. End quote. Although a world state might not eliminate every form of violent conflict among competing groups, it would certainly end competition among states, which will be at the root of any possible grand-scale cyber war or nuclear war. True, Morgenthau's idea of a world state has led some authors to call his theory utopian realism or unconsidered idealism. There is, indeed, no reason to assume that the prospect for the emergence of a world state is less utopian today than it was 50 years ago. Yet, the urge to think of strategies in order to deal with the possible threats to the future of humanity may be even stronger now than it was during the Cold War. As well known, Kant rejected the idea of a world state. But in the face of a grand-scale nuclear warfare combined with a cyber war, the attempt to resurrect Kant's theory of justice may be no less an idealistic move than accepting the proposal for a gradual erection of a world state as proposed by the realist Morgenthau 50 years ago. Thank you for your attention.
Now going to open the floor for questions, and then Professor Giesen and Professor Araujo will present some more of their response to your questions and comments.
If nobody's going to jump in. I would have some, particularly Professor Giesen. I guess that my first question would be, I'm sure both of you are quite familiar with Althusser's notion of mutual annihilation, the theory of mutual annihilation, which basically stands for we should all arm ourselves to the teeth, so we would be less tempted to attack each other. And I wonder if cybersecurity does not put us in this place automatically, to a certain extent. Because I want to dispute the notion that the United States is in such a privileged position regarding cybersecurity as it is regarding regular weapons. Lone states have way more, or even lone actors have way more power here than they have in the international arena, right? And it goes to show when Israel can disrupt the Iranian services with a hack, right? And the other thing is, whenever I hear the narrative about cybersecurity, and this is something that I am interested in myself, I'm always stricken by how easy it is to think of cyber attacks under the narrative, and cyber attacks are more often unsuccessful than they are successful. And there is something to be said about that, I think. That the attacks are usually unsuccessful. That it's usually a history of a loss. And every door you open, right, that you try to open leaves another door open. You cannot not leave a trace here, even with Tor, with whatever you want to use. So it's much less hit than it is myth, actually. And I think there is something to be said about that. And I just wondered, given the circumstances of cybernetics, of technology, we cannot even think of the next step, or what's coming, or how internet is going to change. I mean, we no longer use computers anymore. We mostly use apps to connect, right? So in that sense, is it really necessary to have a principle-based, as you offer, a Kantian-based theory for cyber attacks, for example? I mean, I wonder if we wouldn't be best served by adopting a utilitarian approach here. And finally, the one thing that I wonder about is the question of education towards the cybersphere. I mean, you bring up the question of the zombie computers, right? That most computers are serving some other computers, and the last statistic that I saw was under 75% of personal computers were completely hijacked by spyware or something of the sort, and were in fact working for someone else. But no way that the person behind that computer would know that, and there's no way that people are being educated to know that. And in that sense, maybe there is a principle right there. It would be, states should be educating their citizens towards the uses of these technologies, so they would be aware of what they are opening when they are entering the internet, when they are logging into Facebook, when they are pressing likes. And we're basically doing that behind a very, very foggy situation. I'm sorry, those were too many questions.
Right, I reply maybe first to these 4 questions, and I would like to address some of the points raised in the college. Okay, you mentioned first Kenneth Walls, who became famous in 1981 when he published an article about nuclear bombs under the title "More May Be Better."
Yeah.
So, and he recently, I think 1 or 2 years ago, did it again. And
Yeah.
thought, well, it would be a good thing that Iran has the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
After all, it's the more the better, more because deterrence, nuclear deterrence, then works better. That is his approach, and mutual annihilation would be less likely. Well, the problem is that applying this approach, I mean, never convinced me for nuclear warfare, and it convinces me even less for cyber warfare, because if you transpose this approach to cyber warfare, we got a problem, because the point is, if you compare the costs of warfare, we have to say one cruise missile, nuclear cruise missile costs about $1 million US. With $1 million US, you can do a lot in cyber warfare. So weak state, poor states, if they get the technological knowledge, the know-how, they can catch up very quickly. For the time being, we're just at the beginning of this new evolution. For the time being, there are 4 cyberpowers, and all the others, you can forget about them. France, Germany, Brazil, just the United States, and 3 others maybe, playing the game. But that may change. That may change because now political leaders will understand that investing into cyber capabilities is much more efficient as far as the return on investment is concerned. And then it may be that some countries may hire hackers, or the United States of America, they have a cyber army now. They have a national cyber range, which is a parallel internet. 30 billion US dollars. National cyber range, which is they test the virus in the parallel internet, which is disconnected from everything else. So they first test it there, and then they bring it to the real internet, so to speak. So the Stuxnet virus and the other virus are first tested in this national cyber range, which is somewhere in the desert of New Mexico. Okay. So 30 billion is quite some money, but you can make it cheaper. Okay. So Wall's approach does not, in my view, does not work in cyber warfare just because the weaker states over time will catch up, and then there will be equalization. It can go within 5 years. This goes so fast. It's extremely fast. So I'm not so much convinced by transposing this approach. I mean, I think even in nuclear warfare, the more actors you have with nuclear warheads, the more you have the risk of accident, the more you have the risk of false perception of what the others are doing, etc. So I was never convinced by Kenneth Waltz. Second, the narrative. Well, you state that cyber attacks are more often unsuccessful than successful. I don't know where you got that, because I mean, it depends on what is the aim of a cyber attack. You don't risk so much. You know, you can try. You try to attack. I mean, after all, the United States of America and Israel with the Stuxnet virus was acknowledged by he retired, the General Ashkenazi of Israeli of Tzahal. He acknowledged we are involved in this. So they launched Stuxnet on the Iranian centrifuge system for the enrichment of uranium. So what was the risk? It was successful. The Iranians didn't understand anything. They fired their own engineers because the centrifuge didn't work properly, so they fired their own engineers. They thought they were bad workers. Because what they saw on the screen and what was happening in the real world did not match. Actually, they thought it was sabotaged by their own engineers, so they fired their own engineers. So after a while, they tried to get them back, but they did not come back. You know? So this shows that actually you can try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They introduced the Stuxnet with USB sticks. They gave some USB sticks to some engineers, and then it spread from one USB stick to the other through computers. It first went there, made the whole mapping of the system, then it traveled back to the United States of America somehow through USB sticks again. It was reintroduced, and then with a real virus, because then they had the mapping, and then it started to destroy the whole thing, the centrifuge, etc., etc. It traveled back and forth constantly, actually, until they made a mistake. And the mistake was then that the virus spread to India. And because India has the same software, Siemens software, it's a German firm, by the way, running on the Iranian nuclear installation and on the Indian and Pakistani nuclear installation. And then the Russian firm Kaspersky discovered the whole thing. And then it was over. Maybe over. Because this virus is actually so performant that it transmutes itself, and as soon as you discover it, it's gone. You don't see it anymore. It's a very complicated thing, so it's like Russian puppets. It's several viruses in one. So, I mean, unsuccessful maybe, but even if you're unsuccessful, it doesn't cost you much. You don't have a high risk. So, what's the problem? Actually, to try, it's not such a problem. Now, about the next step, well, utilitarianism. Of course, I could have taken a utilitarian approach, except that I'm not a utilitarian. I'm a Kantian. And I think it's important to have some absolute principles and not just calculating consequences, etc., etc. So, well, that's my personal choice.
Just one.
Okay. Well, I have so many things to answer. So I just want to address your very interesting fourth question, and I would like to address it by a quotation by the Estonian defense minister, who said, I quote, and I think he's perfectly right, "There is no such thing as a personal computer. That's gone. Your personal computer is not anymore personal computer. Anybody can get into the system. There's now been the newest virus on the internet. I'm very much interested in all this technological stuff. The last thing is you have a computer and you have your camera, right? And the camera is here. And now there's a virus activating the camera without you knowing and sending the images to somewhere, right?
And the microphone too.
What?
And the microphone too.
And the microphone too, right? So this is the newest thing, which is a private thing, and if it's a private thing, states can do it as well. And they can do it much better, right? So everything which is on your computer or which you try to hide on a USB stick, use Dropbox or what, it can be reached. There is no such thing as a personal computer. Your computer can be used to attack any other state in the world, and you don't know about it. most of the people at least, let's say 99% of the people don't know. So, you're right, states should educate their citizens about that and inform them. But things evolve so quickly that actually the politicians are not, I think politicians are not aware. We have first to educate the politicians. That they, grasp now what's going on, now how cyberwar works, etc. Okay, I have a few things about the critiques. The first is the limits of Kant's theory in the face of modern warfare. You said, well, Kant did not know total war. He did not grasp total war. Well, yes and no, in some sense. Well, yes, because Kant grasped total war because he articulated precisely in the Metaphysics of Morals, which was published in 1797, the transition to mass warfare, as I said before. That is, he witnessed military conscription and following the French Revolution. That is the tendency to include the entire population into the war effort. So this compulsory enlistment of all male citizens as soldiers. Right? Now, on the other hand, he did not grasp, I agree. If you understand by total war, the major paradigm is World War II. That is, the aim is to exterminate entire civil populations. It's industrialized killing of civil populations, targeted as such by Germany. It is the will to physically destroy entire population. So for sure, Kant was not able to foresee this. I agree with this. He was not able to anticipate such a horror scenario. But now, the point is that with cyber war, precisely, that was my argument, we move out of mass warfare. Cyber weapons can be used with very high precision. It's not anymore industrialized killing. It's very precise targeting, like the Stuxnet virus, which was produced for one precise software, one Siemens software, which is used just for nuclear installations, actually. Very expensive software, etc. And with all the modern weapon systems, the drones, the war robots we have now, etc., actually we need less and less soldiers. And the new warfare we have now is not anymore mass warfare, but it's engineered warfare by highly specialized experts, engineers. We don't need anymore these armies with thousands of, hundreds and thousands of people. It's gone. Conscription is gone. We don't need this anymore. What we need is to wage war engineers. And the thing is that now all weapon systems have an information technology dimension. They are actually, most authors, I disagree with that. Most authors, and you seem to be one of them, believe that cyberwar is the fifth military dimension. So you have terrestrial war, you have naval war, you have aerial war, and you have outer space war, and then comes cyber war. I disagree with this. I think cyber war now invades all the four others. There is no more aerial war or naval war without a cyber dimension. So that's the point. So cyber war is totally new domain, and we are moving out of mass warfare, and that is why I take Kant's just war theory actually only as a starting point. As you may have seen and may have noticed, I reject some of Kant's provision, and it definitely has limits in face of modern warfare. I agree with you. So do all other major authors I know, like Michael Walzer, etc., etc. And that's why I make amendments to Kant's theory of just war. And then the second point is, this is a total disagreement with you about Morgenthau. I've done extensive research on Morgenthau, especially my PhD thesis actually, and read all his book and most of his articles, and I never came across any claim by Morgenthau that we need a world war. He criticizes you're right, he quoted, criticizes the ability of the state to protect its citizens because of new technology. but he does not move to the need of a world government. Quite to the contrary, Bonta was a realist, opposed any attempt to move toward any world government. Quite to the contrary, he was very conscious, as Kenneth was in '56. He published an article on Kant, actually, and he said, well, Kant was a realist, but not for world government. Precisely, Kant did not like the world government idea. So, I mean, Morgenthau published in 1929 his first book in German. He was actually at that time judge in Frankfurt. And the title is, I remember very well, Die internationale Rechtspflege. And he opposed the idealist view at that time in international law to aim at sort of what we call today world governance. Not world government, but world governance. He totally opposed that. And then he had to leave, as a Jew, he had to leave Germany. He left in late 32 or early 33. He went to Geneva. He published 2 books in French first. And in both cases, he opposed very strongly the dominant view in international law at that time that we need through the League of Nations, we come closer to world government, etc., etc. That was his problem actually in Geneva, because there was Kelsen in Geneva, and he never got the position at the Grand Institute of Geneva because of his 2 books in French. So and later in the United States, when he came to Chicago, after Madrid, he went to Chicago, etc., he was quite opposite. He thought that the nation state is the highest moral unit we can imagine. So it was very Hegelian, actually, as a point of view. So the normative claim for world government is there in between the wars, and recently by philosophers like Otto Töffel in Germany, and Jean-Christophe Mel, Christoph Horn, Marcelo, and others from the Tübingen school. I'm a bit skeptical about this. I discussed it with Hofer several times, actually. I think there's a risk of totalitarianism always. There's this problem of the distancing between the individual citizen and then this world government structure. We have in the European Union, we have this problem that citizens feel very far away from all the European institutions. So there's a disenchantment with the EU institutions. And then a world government would mean the end of capitalism. It would mean the end of capitalism, as Immanuel Wallerstein has proposed, because capitalism plays on the interplay, on the competition between states, that you can transfer capital from one state to the other. If the wages are lower in the other state, well, you will invest in the other state. So there's a rush to the bottom, so to speak. One world government could regulate and then put an end to capitalism. And that means the collapse of the system, which is maybe a nice idea. But and on the descriptive level, because you make the distinction between descriptive and normative level, I see tendencies towards ever more states. There are more and more secessions. We have now 200 states. And very quickly, we have all kinds of new claims to secede from other states. We had Kosovo recently. Now the northern part of Kosovo wants to secede from the rest of Kosovo, etc., etc. So the Balkanization of the world goes on, and I see rather the opposite movement, which is we have more and more states and less tendency to work. And then the last point is, I quote you, the kind of threat posed by cyberwar is not new. Well, I disagree again here. It is definitely new. It is not just the 5th dimension of military dimension. In a way, it invades the 4 others, and time and space are changed. Very important. That's totally new. Computer signal travels through several dozens of borders within the fraction of a second. That changes our understanding of war for as far as space is time is concerned. And then in space as well is totally changed, because all other states are your neighbor in cyberspace. You're not anymore in Brazil or Argentina, Well, in cyberspace, your neighbor may be China. So this is a new perception of space. Everybody's next to each other. And new actors are involved as well. That's new, totally new. We have private hackers working for states. States hire hackers because these youngsters, these are teenagers. 16 years old teenagers. Very good, very performant. When they're very good, the army comes and says, why don't you work for us? And then, because they are on the problem. And then also everything is linked to everything in Cyberwar. This is totally new as well. In the Internet of Things, what is called the Internet of Things, which is growing very quickly. Everything is now connected in one way or another to the Internet. Pacemakers, not just computers, everything. You go to the hospital and there's an operation going on and it's on the screen, you know, the doctor has everything on the screen, and what he has to do with it comes from elsewhere, it's not anymore, you know, physically there. So if you disrupt that or you put some false information, the operation will go wrong, etc., etc. So this, I think this is very, very new. And then just the last word, during the Cold War there has been a vast literature on the just war theory, especially in the 60s and 70s. So this is a continuing philosophical effort to understand the nature of war and how to put moral limits to the war effort.
Thank you for the objections. The first point about total war in Kant, there were two sentences. Of course, Kant had an idea of a very large war, but there is one idea that couldn't have occurred to Kant, is the idea of, as a result of a war, that the whole humankind might be annihilated. I think this is a very new idea that couldn't have occurred to any philosopher previous to Second World War, previous to the 50s. I mean, this idea that in principle you could, humankind might vanish from the earth as a result of a war. And I think it's a great challenge for any theory of just war to come to terms with this very basic fact. And as for Morgenthau, this is a different topic. Morgenthau published one of his better known books, Politics Among Nations, shortly after the Second World War, 1948. But then he kept working on the book till the 60s, and it has not always been the same position throughout all these editions. And during the 60s, he really not only considered the possibility of a world state, he advocated the idea. There is a whole series of articles from the 60s. I was myself very, very surprised when I came in contact with the literature on Morgenthau and the idea of a world state. There are articles by Ken Booth and others which criticize him. They don't take the idea seriously, the idea proposed by Morgenthau, but he may not have been coherent with all the ideas he developed previous to the 60s. But I think this is an idea he really endorsed for a time, perhaps not during his whole career, and we don't have to have the expectation that the same author must endorse the same ideas throughout his intellectual career. But he saw that the danger of thermonuclear war was a danger for the very existence of humankind. And I agree, I agree with you and about the idea of a world state. Of course there are many problems to be overcome, and the danger of totalitarianism is an important one. As for the collapse of capitalism, I'm not sure. But the problem now, and I think this is the point Morgenthau had in mind, is that in the face of this possibility, which is not science fiction now, that there may be a major war with perhaps even the annihilation of the humankind, its idea that perhaps should take seriously, namely the attempt to gradually construct new institutions. What I have proposed here is not simply the product, the result, a world state. What I had proposed was the challenge of thinking about alternatives to the structure of the system of the states. And the main point I had I tried to make here is that what leads us to propose just war theories in the first place is the very existence of a system of states. And it's not something which can be compromised by a theory of just war. The fact now that the system of states itself can have very dreadful results in the form of cyber war, as you have told, and a major nuclear war. I think these are the basic points I had in mind. And one question which had been posed firstly was about Kenneth Waltz and the idea that through nuclear weapons peace might be kept. I think this was an idea very tempting in the 70s when he published his second book. But it was tempting as long as just a few states have atomic weapons, United States, France, and so forth. But it's a completely different scenario nowadays. There's the possibility of other states which are very, very unpredictable of obtaining weapons of mass destruction. And one point I had in mind was this possibility of a war by mistake. Like in the 90s, there was the real possibility of a new nuclear war because the Russians thought that a missile flying over their territory was a missile, a rocket, and they thought it was a missile. And I think this is a problem which traditional just war theories didn't have to solve, namely the speed of retaliation nowadays is so, we have so little time to think about retaliation. Well, after the French Revolution, people could discuss the strategies for the retaliation, and well, nowadays it's not possible. Either you retaliate in time, or you just wait and see. And I think it might have been the beginning of a new nuclear war, and the beginning of a nuclear war in the 90s, because the nuclear capacities of Russian is becoming obsolete. There's not much control, and the radar may simply fail. And I'm not sure if principles of traditional principles of just war theory are really in a position to compromise all those new factors of the 20th century. And this is some basic ideas.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, what time we can go into the books? I just need to very much disagree. I would like to, just to come back to the last point about the time dimension. It's true, we have less and less time. And that's already true for, it's already true for nuclear warfare. I mean, when you have a new president in the United States or in France, for instance, the new and the old president always meet for at least 1 hour, because then the transmission of the nuclear codes. And you have always this, you watch very carefully the TV images, you see always, there's always, wherever he is, Mr. Obama or Mr. Hollande, there's always an officer with a bag, and in the bag is the nuclear codes. And this officer is always very close to the president. And then when the old president gives the code to the new president and explains, etc., etc. Now the point is, except for this initial decision, That is, if, say, there's a missile coming into the territory of the United States of America, intercontinental missile takes about 20 minutes if it's shot from, say, Central Asia towards the territory of the United States. So until the satellites detect the missile, it's already 7 minutes are gone. Then you have to wake up the president if it's in the middle of the night. And he has about 10 minutes to decide about the counterattack. And then once he takes the bag and opens the code, it's very complicated. Somebody explained it once to me. It's extremely complicated. It's really to be woken up to do it properly, and then the whole system is automatic. That's the point. Time is compressed because everything is automized. And that's the danger, indeed. But it's through cyberwar, this will be even, you can hack that system. That's the problem now. Before, you had just the bag, and still you have to add some human dimension to it. But now you theoretically, it's well protected for sure, but still, it's possible to hack that system. That's the new dimension. You can. The point is that even a state which does not have any nuclear weapons can still intervene in, say, the United States of America, and all of a sudden the US Army fires nuclear missiles on San Francisco or New York, on its own cities. That's now perfectly possible. Now, we have no time. Time is gone. You're right. We cannot think anymore. And I fully agree with you, but cyber war adds to that problem. That it accelerates even more the whole thing. And that's new. That's why I do not agree with you that it's not a new thing. Yeah, of course it's new. Okay, that's it.
Any more questions? Yeah, I think people are thinking of some juicy meat. Okay, go ahead.
Concerning your account of Heidegger, you said that Heidegger asked us to do nothing, right, and step away from technology. But he states quite cute in Gelassenheit. It's a speech he delivered in his hometown, and he states clearly in that essay that we should not simply step away from technology and get rid of it. Instead, we should use technology, but we should use it in such a way as to preserve our independence. So I don't know. I don't read Heidegger as telling us to do nothing, right? And I want you to comment on that. And also, you said that a world state would be impossible because that would, I don't know, destroy capitalism. But I don't know, we live, Brazil is a nation state, and we've seen here that competition also happens in a local level. You have, I don't know, Rio Grande do Sul is competing against Bahia State because they want a car factory or whatever. I don't know, I just, it really bothered me, your account of Heidegger, because he said it would be preposterous to say, oh, let's get rid of technology and do nothing.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, the first thing about Heidegger is I did not say that Heidegger proposed to get rid of technology. Precisely.
To do nothing, right?
But to do nothing, politically speaking, or in terms of regulated technology. That's what I meant. I mentioned that he very well thinks that we have to listen, that we have to go into Denken, which is non-philosophical thought. It's thought, which is art, poetry. He mentioned in this text Hölderlin, and he quotes actually Hölderlin as the preferred poet by Heidegger. And what you mentioned by Gelassenheit is this, let's take it easy, so to speak. Let's take it easy. That's the German word Gelassenheit. We go into art and poetry. Philosophy cannot help us. The social sciences cannot help us. Politics, for sure not. An attempt to really regulate technology may make things worse, actually. But I agree with you. I never said we should not do anything. We should go into art and poetry because they will save us, so to speak. Okay, that's what I understood. That's my interpretation. And now the thing about the world state. It's not about the. It was a normative statement I made. It's not. I think it's not desirable. I find it a frightening idea. It's not, the collapse of capitalism is no problem for me. If it's a better system after, it's no problem for me. But it was a painful transition. The collapse of capitalism would be extremely, would cause immense human suffering. We should not forget about that. Because it will be linked to all kinds of civil wars and conflicts and people getting lost, etc. Now the state, the national state, still has one big advantage. I'm not a nationalist at all, quite to the contrary. But the state at least provides some protection to the citizen, some protection. Through globalization, this protection has been lowered for sure, but still there's social security. This does not exist on international level. How do you want to organize social security on the world scale? That would be very interesting. That's in terms of distributive justice on the world's level. Very interesting. But to implement that is another story, right? You have several. Then you have also the other protections of the citizens. So the world state would then extrapolate that on a scale, unprecedented scale, which I think is really not desirable because at that point. The individual citizen may not feel protected anymore. And that's actually exactly the problem now with all these anti-globalization movements, which are very interesting. I think one aspect is people don't feel any more protected by the state. There have been demonstrations in Brazil and in Bulgaria now, very similar by the way. And anti-corruption movements, claiming better services from the state, for public services, etc., etc. More efficiency by the state. People claim better states, not the world state.
Well, thank you very much. We have to stop now because we have to run according to schedule, and we have a meeting starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. for the submitted papers, and at 2 p.m. we resume our presentations of papers and discussions, and again at 7:30 we get back to our lectures. Thank you, Professor Gizen. Thank you, Professor Araujo. Good night.